Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Findaway Productions with your co-host, Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's up, coaches? This is the Coaching 101 podcast. I'm Daniel Chamberlain here with Kenny Simpson. Coach, how is Northeast Arkansas today?
Well, I think the heat break's finally going to come. We didn't get it last week. It was still 90 degrees. I've never been as a record heat out here, but it's coming, and it's football weather's coming. And I think our kids are excited. I think this is that point of the year. We mentioned it last week that everybody's it's that grind. This is a grind part of the season, and it's going to continue to be a grind part of the season, probably through whenever you end. Some guys, it's a merciful or late October, early November, because those seasons you kind of want to be done. Some guys, that are having great years, you might have 2 more months, depending on how your state works things. But to us, man, we're excited. We're doing well. Personally, our team is 5-0 right now, and so have a lot of work to go. We understand a lot of big games coming up, but it's just different, and I think that's one of the things that administrators in the South know. I don't know about other states. I can't speak for them, but generally, if the football program is having success, the atmosphere around the school is way easier. There's less discipline issues. There's more school spirit. There's more likely you're going to have kids showing up on time. All of those things kind of correlate. A lot of times in public schools, right, wrong, or indifferent, with how well the football team is doing. Right. And so in the South, what also correlates with that generally, I need to get my school on board with this, but generally is the salary goes up on those guys. So if I can get them all the administrators that might be listening to this, the 3 of you that probably are, that's why they pay football coaches a lot of money, because I think they can impact the school's atmosphere quite a bit. Sorry, it's a real big tangent there.
No, it absolutely makes sense. You're right. When things are going well and success is showing up, everybody just tends to be in a better mood, and things, you have a lot less problems. So the school goes as the team goes, if you will. Well, you're right about the heat, man. It's like, I think it was 95 or something Friday when we played, or not when we played. It had cooled off a little bit. Our school, and I guess they've always kind of done this, but we don't kick off till 7:30, and that 30 minutes, you don't think much about it, but our AD says that, and I heard this from another person, but essentially the AD says that if you kick off at 7:30, it's a primetime event versus kicking off at 7, and so we always have a primetime game, so I think that's pretty funny. But man, just that 30 minutes, just letting that heat get out of there is wonderful. Keep the kids out of the sun that much longer, or whatever. So it's nice.
Facebook, they always run those ads. And so I bought this hoodie that I'm wearing now and another hoodie, because I was like, I'm going to need hoodies. And then it got to 97 degrees. So they came in time for it to be 98 or whatever it was last week.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible. But, well, good, man. I'm waiting, being a deer hunter. It's the 1st of October, and I'm not hunting because it's too hot. I'm not going to waste my time and effort going out there. Some guys are probably like, that's they just have to be in the stand because it is deer season. But as us coaches, we're already busy enough. Like, going out there and wasting my time is not on my to-do list. So I'm hoping for the cool weather. Well, man, we'll get started here. So tonight we're talking about B team games. I know we need to run our ads real quick, so we'll get that done in just a moment. But BT games here, we're just talking JV. Really, you could go all the way back, I guess, into your elementary, your middle school, whatever level the school starts, youth sports, right? And so we want to talk about the importance of those and how to kind of help yourself later, right? Get that development in at those ages, and then that way you're however many can come to the freshman year and beyond, they're helping your program when they show up, hopefully. But before we get started, Coach, why don't you go ahead and share some ways we can keep things simple for our staff and athletes?
Coaching 101 podcast is sponsored by Findaway Productions. Findaway Productions also sponsors fbcoachsimpson.com for all your coaching needs, with over 30 coaching materials, books, as well as 50 PowerPoints and videos and smaller materials and the free magazine headsets. Findaway Productions also sponsors offensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things offense, and defensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things defense.
This episode is brought to you by Athletic Speed and Movement. At athleticspeedmovement.com, we've taken Dell Basket's 45 years of speed and movement training and put it all in one place just for you. You can get the same training that NFL players have been getting for years, collegiate players have been getting for years, and now high schools across the nation are paying thousands of dollars to bring Dell in to install his system, but we've got it online for you. It's time to help your team become faster, not just in the 40, not just their sprint speed, but between the tackles and their cuts while they're chasing down the quarterback. It's time for you to help them become faster everywhere. Jump over to athleticspeedmovement.com. There's an orange button there. Just click it. It says, get the keys to playing faster. You'll get the 3 core movement video from Dell. He's explaining the science behind it, all for just the price of your email. Check it out, athleticspeedmovement.com. Awesome. Appreciate that. So what are, first question is, what are B team games?
Yeah, I think you kind of mentioned a little bit in the intro. I mean, you're talking about that can be defined in a lot of ways depending on the situation that you're in. Some coaches in big cities or in large schools, that might only mean they're 10th graders, they're 10th and 11th graders, because you have zero control over before then. Some coaches that are fortunate, I'm in a pretty fortunate situation where we go all the way down to, like, we started them in 3rd grade and they play youth league football, and I could be as involved or uninvolved as I want to be, but you have that opportunity to dig down into the really lower levels and kind of get with them. To me, I'm going to kind of focus most of my attention on basically a sub varsity level. So if you're a junior high head coach, think about maybe your 8th graders. Maybe if you're a varsity coach, think about your 10th graders. That's kind of where I'm going to focus most of the discussion. But like you brought up, it could mean your 4th grade team, 5th grade team, 6th grade team. So take that for what it's worth. I think a lot of coaches miss the value on some of those things. And some of that is because a lot of times, even though we want to say we want to come into a school and build a culture and be there for a long time, we don't necessarily mean that. I mean, you can see that by the statistics that kind of prove it out, that most coaches are 5 years or less.
Right.
So when you're dealing with being somewhere 5 years or less, do you really care what the 5th grade team's doing? Because the odds of that coming to you is probably not very high. So I think some of that you have to kind of quantify or qualify, whatever the word is there, with what's your situation, but I think you're never going to be wrong to invest in the young, even if you don't reap the reward of it. Because if you do end up staying at that job, I'm at one, I didn't know I was going to be here 10 years later. I had no idea. My seniors, I was out there watching them play in 3rd grade. At that time, did I know that I was still going to be in the same school and those were going to be my seniors? I did not. I probably didn't even think that was going to happen.
Yeah.
Here we are. Unfortunately for me, I made an investment. So kind of going a little bit there, I think you have to kind of decide what is a B team game for you. All right. Now for me, when I'm talking about mainly what I'm gonna focus on tonight, I'm talking about like a sub varsity game. So when you get into that world, here's how we kind of look at that. I look at that as a non-starter. So this is a guy who's, again, you may have to play some starters on B team games, and I'll qualify that here in a second. But basically, these are the guys who don't already get to play. So these are guys that don't play on Friday night if you're a varsity coach, or don't play on Thursday or whatever other night if you're a junior high coach. These are the guys that are not out there most of the time. All right. We look at those as an opportunity that everyone's going to play. So for us, every single person on our roster, when they come to me from really even 3rd grade on, we have a rule in our youth that everyone plays. And then we have a rule in the 7th grade that pretty much, as much as we can, they all play. And we try to do extra quarters, even B team 7th grade games, so they get to play. In our junior high program, we have B team games or JV games, whatever you want to call them, so that every kid plays. And then when they get to me in 10th grade and 11th grade, if they're not a starter, they still have as many as we can schedule, which is tough at a smaller school. We're 5A, but we're kind of a smaller 5A. It's hard to find games in that world, but we try to have at least 2 to 4 games a year where those kids get to play under the lights. I think it's important even if you're not developing a kid. So I'm going to talk in a second here about developing kids, but even if you know this is a kid who's not going to step foot on the field for you on Friday night, and there are those kids in our programs, and we could pretty much identify them pretty quickly, and a lot of time the kid's even aware of that.
Right.
So it's not a shock to anyone, even including their parents sometimes. They may not like it, but I think they see it.
Yes.
And so you have those kids that you kind of know. Well, in my mind, Monday night is their opportunity to get a reward for the hard work they're putting in to help your team get better. Because that kid has a role on your team, whatever that role might be. It's usually scout team, or it may be whatever you've kind of given him a role. And I think it's important as a coach, every single kid on your roster knows what their role is and you're honest with them. But those Monday nights for those kids, that's their Friday night. That's their opportunity to get under the lights, to be seen. We're not going to probably invest as much time in that kid because they're not going to play on Friday, but they are going to play because I think those kids have earned the right to get to play.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing for me. The second thing I'll do, or third thing I'll do, and I'll pass it on to you, Daniel, is I think you need to look at this part as development. And I think we all know that. Deep down, everyone knows that. And I'll give you a real story that just happened to me today. So Sunday meetings, I always call the coach we're playing in JV, because at our level in Arkansas, we're playing a 4A school. They have 28 kids on their roster. So he called me. They had 3 kids get hurt on Friday night. So guess what he called me and told me? We can't play JV Monday night. I'm really sorry, coach. We want to play, but I'm having to start these kids now, and I can't get them hurt on Monday night. And my gut reaction was, good. I don't have to deal with a Monday night game. And that's a natural, honest reaction. I don't know how to sugarcoat that. Like, that's a natural, cool. I can go watch my daughter play volleyball. I can go be with my family. I can go do whatever. That's the selfish part of me. Okay. The part of me that has learned knows that, dang, that stinks, because there's probably about 10 to 12 kids on our roster that needed that night. They needed that night to develop. They needed that night to get reps. They needed that night to get rewards. And I needed them to get that night, because I might need those kids this year if injuries hit me, or I might need those kids this year for a special team, or I definitely am going to need those kids next year. So they need those reps. That part kind of stinks. And then the last part of it, I think you got to think about, is developing coaches. So on these lower key games, and I don't mean to make them diminish them, lower key games is an opportunity to develop your future staff, and it's an opportunity to reward coaches. So at the beginning of each season, try to visit my coaches. Of course, I've had a staff now for a while, so I know them pretty well. Right. And figure out what their future goal is. There's guys on my staff that they're going to be here till they retire, and they're really cool doing an assistant coach. They don't have a big role on JV nights because that's not their future. They're going to be out there and they're going to support our team. We're all going to be out there to support our team. But they don't really have a desire to be a play caller. They don't have a desire to be a head coach. So I'm not going to put them in charge of a JV game. I think a lot of coaches sometimes will punish coaches for that. But I've got a couple coaches on my staff that I think want to call plays. I've got coaches on my staff that want to be a defensive coordinator. And I've got coaches on my staff that want to be a head coach. And it's really good for them to do all their screw ups on Monday night in front of the 15 people watching.
Right.
Because get it all out of the way. We can talk about it immediately in a pretty low key. I'm not getting mad if we lose a Monday game. So we can talk about it and address it right there. And there's no anger. There's no frustration of that we just lost this game. So you can coach your coaches. The coaches can coach the players. So when I say development, I'm not just talking about our players. I'll get one more caveat here, Daniel, then I'll kick it to you. A couple of years ago, we were not very good at Southside. So I took the job. We were not very good. I ignored the youth because we had a decent team. And so we made a run at the playoffs, couldn't quite get in. Well, that next year, we fell off a cliff. It was not a good year. Not a good year. And so, but during that year, we started a bunch of sophomores. And so our JV nights were different than everyone else's JV nights. Our JV nights now were everyone who's a junior and below is going to play. All of our coaches are going to wear their Friday game wear and their headsets. And we're going to figure out how to win, because we had to learn how to win. And low pressure Monday night games gave us a nice 5-1 JV schedule. scheduled anybody we could schedule. We played everybody we could play. Some of those kids that stunk because they started on Friday and started on Monday, but they were getting their brains beat out on Friday because they were sophomores, and we could win on Monday. And so sometimes those JV games, depending on your situation, you may want to treat them different. Like that year, I was the head coach of JV because we needed to start showing some success. So I hope that makes sense.
Yep. No, I think B team games are different for different schools, and I have been most of the places I've been. Those games were exactly what you said. Oh, the game's canceled on Monday. Yes, right. I don't have to deal with it this week. Unfortunately, I think that becomes habitual, and you start looking for reasons to cancel them. It's going to be kind of warm. We probably shouldn't go play that game, or like I've had the experience where we were just, is there any reason we cannot play this game tonight? Can we just send the coach text and not do it? And I have been on both sides where I'm like, yeah, I really don't want to do it either. And then I'd have grown to where I'm more like what you said, the second part there, coach. And that is we really need to get these kids a game, and coaching's fun. Once you get there and the first kickoff happens, you have a blast. It's not like you're out there, being tortured. And if you are, maybe change professions, because it's the greatest, like you said, no pressure. You can call whatever you want. You can draw up plays in the dirt if you want, right? Like, it's a great place to go just to coach. It's just the getting there. And giving up a night. But once you do it, I think it's okay. We have different, and I don't know if it's self-imposed. I don't know. So at Owasso, we have a lot of kids. Number one, we're the 5th largest school in the state. And so not only do we have B teams, but we have B teams for our B team. So like, I'm a freshman coach, I'm freshman DC. I have a team that's supposed to go out and win every single game. And then I have a everybody plays team, right? And sometimes we're not always the best as coaches at like remembering that white team night is everyone should try to get some reps, because we get caught up in wins and losses. But and so, but we have both of those teams. And so we have kids, Oklahoma has a rule, and I'm sure most states have the same rule or similar. I don't know for sure. But kids can suit up for 2 games, right? I think it's 8 quarters, in fact. So you got to be careful on like overtime and stuff like that. I'm not sure how all the red tape is there, but yeah, essentially you get 2 games to suit up, regardless if you play or not. So the kids aren't going to play on Friday night. The freshmen almost never even go to JV. Like, it's a completely different program. We have a different locker room. We have a different coach's office than the varsity. So, ours is even a little bit different in that, because we're trying to make football fun for kids. We want to get them to their sophomore year. That's like the big drop off, right? From freshman to sophomore. And so we're trying to keep them all in the building. And the way you do that's win games. So, winning is a little bit more important. It doesn't always have to be, I don't think. And then we have that second team. We can do the development and, and I think that's kind of where we fit everybody else's general B team. JV has the same thing. So they've got a couple teams. I tell you what's hard with ours is we play Monday and Tuesday night. So now we're giving up 3 nights a week for games. But it's different staff. So the JV, I don't deal with them at all. That's the varsity staff just coaching those other guys that need the development. So they have 2 games a week as well for JV. So it's really kind of neat how they have it set up there. I know I've been places where we just didn't have the kids, right? You have 22, 27 kids on your roster. You're right. You almost can't go risk one of them. If you set all 22 starters, and maybe that's the 11 kids, then you got to make that. Am I going to start my two deep roster? Is that who's going to JV? Like, you just got to start. It's that risk and reward. But anyway, yeah. So B team games, JV freshmen. Actually, this year saw a Texas team. They had a Froshmore team, which I thought was pretty neat, because that's still that. Maybe you don't have enough freshmen that can really play ball to even go out and do anything. So then you've got 9th and 10th. And I've seen that before. We played a kid down that was never going to get a Friday night. We'll talk to the coach and be like, let him play on freshmen. And then, of course, the middle school and junior high. And I think really, it's not, we're talking the sub-varsity, and as we move through here, that will be the thing. But you look at the successful teams and the ones that grow quickly and become successful, and then they're dominating for years. It's because, the varsity head coach has got input at the 5-year-olds out there playing flag football, and he's talking fundamentals there, and he's teaching that coach how to coach. And, that works its way up through middle school and junior high and all that. So there is a lot to it. And I know you're talking about, you said something, that investment, having to make it, and you never know if you're going to be around, but getting practice at that kind of stuff is a big part of it too, right? And that way, when you go to your next one, you've worked out some kinks at the junior high level, and now you have a new format or a new way to do that. And so, you're installing your program all the way down. And if you just keep practicing, I guess, just keep getting that practice. But all right, we beat up the What Are B Team game. So let's talk about importance. So why are they important? I know we've already kind of touched on a couple of these, especially going into development and stuff. I want to start here and just talk about how we use it to build confidence in kids as young as possible. So there's kids that probably wouldn't stay on the team if all of these freshmen that I'm coaching just had to go ride the pine. You know what I mean? You pay your dues. Like, that's kind of how I remember the old school way of being. Like, you go to practice, you sweat like everybody else, you get to Friday night and you just stand there, and your feet hurt at the end because you've been standing in cleats like you were going to get to go, and you never get to go, right? It's just not, it isn't feasible. And of course, when you get these larger schools like where I am now, they're really not going to ever see the field. Okay. We have a few that play up. We just bumped one up this past week. That was, he got to play this Friday. He's went from the starter on freshman to he was second string on varsity. So he got him some reps, and that's really cool to see that happen. But we usually use it to build that confidence, to keep those kids around. So keep them in the program and let their bodies develop. Freshmen are just so small generally, right? They need that extra year. I know at some schools I've been at, you don't see your 8th graders. And so you don't know what they're doing in the weight room. They're just too separated from your program. So by the time you get them as freshmen, yeah, they've had one summer. Hopefully, if they, if their parents were bought in and they could get to workouts, you've had one summer to develop them. So you really need to let their body develop before you're worried about those varsity reps. And so, that's where we use them. Just build that confidence and keep them in the program, and keep them that way. They are an asset to us as a sophomore, junior, or senior. And then we just use a lot of it for just additional live fire practice, right? That's why it's important to us, is because we're in a world now where you can't have 4-hour practices. You can't have 3-hour practices, right? The parents will be complaining. The kids won't listen. And our attention spans are so short nowadays anyway. You can't even watch YouTube videos anymore. You have to watch YouTube shorts now, right? Because people won't stick around for one video for 10 minutes. And now we want to put kids on a practice field. So I know that 90-minute and 2-hour practice plans are really becoming popular. And that's sometimes just not enough time to get all of your install in and see it, all the kids get the reps. So that's where we like to use it. We use our white team nights. It's just like a practice for them. Yeah, it's competitive. It's against somebody they've never seen before, or, it's not on their team. There's a scoreboard going with some points up there. But really, it's a chance for us as coaches to watch them go through the same fundamentals we've been installing all week, but they may not have got very many reps at it in practice.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of, reasons to do it. I've got 3 pretty quick ones I'll hit right here. One, you mentioned it, and I'll just put it in kind of coach term. Puberty wins a lot of games when you're under the age of about 16 years old. And sometimes it can still win them in high school, but not as much. So basically, the kid who's the biggest, fastest, strongest kid, they're going to win a lot of games 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, but that's not necessarily are they going to pan out where they're going to be. And the opposite is true of a lot of very talented senior high players that I've had. And if you've coached long enough, you probably can think of this kid, but he wasn't good enough to play in 7th grade and really didn't play much in the 8th and 9th grade and didn't even play much as a 10th grader. And then all of a sudden, puberty kicked in, and now you've got a kid who's a very hardworking kid who's stuck with it, who's probably had to learn to adapt and work hard, and now he has the physical skills on top of that. Well, that kid, you mentioned it, he doesn't stay in your program if there's not some kind of carrot. You mentioned confidence, and that's definitely part of it, but I think Xbox has taken more football players than anything else, because I'm not going to show up and practice and not get to play. Are you going to go to work and not get paid? That's that's kind of the generational mindset we have here, where when you and I grew up, or I'm a little older than you, but when I grew up, and maybe even someone you grew up, because it is quickly changing, there was about 4 things you could do. I mean, you could be in like the choir, the band, or play sports. That was kind of your options. And at most schools, it was football or cross country. And I didn't want to run. So there weren't a lot of options. So if you want to sit me on the bench, well, I can be mad about it, but there's not a lot of other things to go do. Well, now there's a million things to go do, and a lot of kids that are okay to go do nothing. And so you've got to figure out a way to continue to motivate these kids to stay with your program. And it's not a guarantee they're going to stay, but if they're getting to play a little bit, whatever night of the week that is, and put the jersey on and compete, and you show some interest in them, or your B team coaches do, the likelihood of that kid finishing goes way up. It goes way up. So puberty is a big one. You never know who's going to develop too. You got to give those kids a lot of confidence, in my opinion. And then the last thing I put on there is, a lot of times as coaches, we need to practice with situational football. We can schedule practice all we want, but the first time you're calling plays with 30 seconds to go and no timeouts, you find out real quick, I got a long way to go. Or the first time you're trying to deal with clock management at the end of the game, when do we call our timeouts? When do we not call our timeouts? How do we do this? What do we do here? Or the first time you had this whole, playbook design and there went your stud. Now what are you going to call? So that's a lot of situational stuff where coaches, don't underestimate. Coaches are going to have to work through stuff in a game-like situation with the play clock and officials and opponents. And I know there's not like a bunch of pressure to win, but when the ball's rolled out and it's another team, there's pressure to win. And so I think that's something that we sometimes lose sight of, is we're getting to work through this. And not only are we working through this, so are our 10th graders, or our 8th grader, whatever level you're coaching, they're working through it too. So the first time they punt it and one of your kids tries to field it when he's not supposed to, that's a learning experience. Or the first time it's 4th and 1 and shockingly they go on 2 and you jump off sides, well, that's a learning experience. And so those are things you got to work through, because these kids don't play a lot. And so they're going to make those mistakes. So hopefully when they get out there on Friday night, when that time comes, they've made all those mistakes in games that really don't matter.
Right. Yeah, that's we just lost a game. We didn't lose it but our white team, we had a chance, use the timeout sparingly, had to get a stop on 4th down and jumped off sides on 4th and 5 or something, and they're in the shadow of their own end zone, like goalpost, like they could, it was perfect. It was perfectly set up. And then here goes my defensive end. So, that happens. And it makes you mad. And you talk about being developed. I mean, you're talking about, we can tie that right big into practice, right? Have we been practicing that? No, we hadn't, right? We're so short on time with 2 game nights a week. Another practice day is just for weight room. They have to go to the weight room. So we lose that day of practice. We get a Thursday is a full day, and Friday we have to shorten so that we can go to the varsity game. So we get 1 day of practice. So it's like we're already dealing with that time management as coaches. So there's things we've left out, right? Just trying to get install done, and going on 2 is one of those things that every time the Scout-O goes on 2, my defense is jumping, and it's just one of them things, right? So anyway, yeah. So you start figuring out what you need to practice more, what kids really are just nodding their head at the newest install, and they're like, oh yeah, coach, I know what I'm doing. And then they don't know what they're doing. Alignments, assignments, whatever it is. So, yeah, it really does develop you as a coach as well. And then, last question here is just, how do we choose who plays in coaches?
This is tough. Oh, you can go first?
Yeah, sure. So, when it comes to coaching, once again, it depends on what you are. I'm being stipended to be the defensive coordinator for the freshman team. So allowing another guy to call plays, I could probably do it on white night, right? Maybe you start working in a newer coach and let him call the plays. I'm only in my 4th year though, so it's still a lot of development for me as well. Working together as a staff, obviously we have an assigned staff. We're not worried about who's leaving varsity practice early on Monday to go do these games because we're our own staff. But, I've been at schools where that was the case. And it was always kind of a chess piece of who's going to call these games. Now, we would have a freshman head coach, but he was on the varsity staff. And then just kind of who's going to go help him. Or is he calling everything this week because we need our DC and OC here, right? Like, we can't let them go. So when it comes down to coaching, I think that is a really good chance. And my very first head coach let me call the plays after about 4 or 5 weeks. We went to a JV game and he was like, call the offense. Like, I was always in the box. So it was nice just to be on the sideline. He was like, just call it, man. It's cool. And just let them kind of feel what that feels like. What's the flow of the game? How am I working, run and pass balance? And your system, coach, is beautiful on, whatever the defense gives me, I'm going to take it. So, it's a results based. So if I get tackled by the backside linebacker, I'm going to put a pass right where he's supposed to be, or kind of the if then, I guess. All right, let people feel what that feels like. And then that helps you on Friday because now they're going, oh yeah, I remember I called these plays and I set up this really big home run ball. Are we getting those results on Friday night? So they learn where to have their eyes on Fridays to help you make the same calls, right? So once again, it's just that investment of your younger coaches, just like your younger player. And they don't have to be young coaches, just, guys who aren't in the big positions yet and might want to be at some point. But I think that even their future, yes, it's an investment there, but just for your own team, like they're going to get to Friday night and understand that stress and understand what you're going through. Maybe they're asking too many questions or talking on the headset too much while you're trying to call a game, and then when you put them in the place, just ask them some questions right in the middle of the drive and see, how they kind of react. But so lots of mumbling and rambling there, but the biggest thing is just let them younger coaches get on and do some play calling.
Yeah, I'd say, like you mentioned, a lot depends on the situation. So I've already shared one story where I felt like we needed to win, so I kind of took the reins. Well, this year we pulled up a 9th grader to play on our team. This first one we've ever done. I needed him to come start for me on the varsity as a defensive back so we could win games now, which so far has panned out pretty well. Unfortunately, that robbed him of his 9th grade year at quarterback when he would have been the main quarterback. So now our Monday night games are his and my 11th grade quarterback's time to develop. So because of that, I've called the plays in our JV games. It's not that we don't have a coach on staff who can't call it, but I felt that with 2 young quarterbacks that are developing, it would probably be best if I was heavily involved in it that year. So I've kind of taken a little bit more of an active role calling the offense in those situations because of what needed to happen.
Yeah.
But as a general rule of thumb, I try to let our younger guys that are developing as coaches kind of have that role. And then I think you also have to think about, like, to me, we're going to have guys that don't start, but then we have a few spots that are key to our program. So like almost any team at this point in football, the quarterback position is a huge position to be successful on offense, regardless of what you run. So we have had multiple times where, yeah, this guy started somewhere else for us on Friday night, but Monday night was his chance to play quarterback. And that was the best reps you're ever going to get him. And we'd put rules with him, like you're not allowed to run, or, we're going to kill certain RPOs because we can't get that guy hurt because we got to win on Friday night. And so there were limits to what they could do, but those were live reps for them. Last year, our kid who played JV quarterback, our quarterback got hurt week 7, had to play the last 3 games of the year. So those reps were big for him to be ready. And this year, like I mentioned, we have a 9th grader, we've got an 11th grader. Both of them are talented kids. They're not going to get just a ton of practice reps because our quarterback is very unique. He's more of an athlete, and these guys are more quarterbacks. And right. So the offense will change when they're the one catching the snap as opposed to the main guy catching the snap. So those Monday nights become key. And if you're a defensive coach, depending on your system, there might be certain spots where you need to develop the next guy. So that would be a time where I'd say it may be okay to play a Friday night starter, at least a couple series. There's been times we said, you're going to come out and you're going to play 2 series get all our checks, make sure we're good at safety, then you're done for the night. You're done, take your pads off, go to the locker room, you're done. But it's important for us that you get some reps there. Or it might be a guy who's coming back from injury who needs to get some reps to kind of get back into game shape. Or it might be a guy who's really struggling on Friday night that needs some extra reps. And these are the best reps you can get him. So I say non-starters, but there's been multiple times we might have had 3 or 4 kids out there that play some, on Friday night. And then say non-varsity coaches or like me, I'm not usually calling JV, but there are situations where it changes. So I think the big key, you mentioned it depends on your situation. I think the underlying thing that does not need to be done is for it to be neglected. Like it needs to happen. It needs to be done as well as possible for hopefully these reasons we put out there.
Yeah, and I hope that kind of what you just said opens people's eyes. Like it is okay to play a starter down. Like we understand injuries happen, and they could happen on the first play of the game on Friday night. And then is there anybody to replace that kid, right? Or it could happen on JV night. But all the games that it didn't happen, how much better did that player get for those reps, right? I realize that there are places that you just cannot have. We've been, I don't know what the magic number is. I don't know if it's 30, if it's 25. I don't know. I don't know at what point you should make sure that you're playing those games. I would just say if you can at all feasibly make it happen, make it happen. Even if it's 2 games a year, that's 2 more than those kids would have had, right? So, as many games as you can. We're pretty lucky this year. We get a 9-game schedule for both of our freshman teams, but we have to play the same teams twice. So we play everyone twice in our area, and that's how we make it work. And we have a couple we picked up for just single games. But
our JV schedule this year has turned into the same team twice. Unfortunately, it dropped. It went from, we had 4 or 5 scheduled, we're down to 2. It's the same team.
Yeah,
but it's a game and it matters.
That's right. Yep. All right, man. Well, I think unless you have any final points here, we'll move on to what not to do as a coach. So why don't you go ahead and give us what our lesson is today?
Yeah, kind of keeping with the theme of what we've been talking about. So today's lesson and what not to do as a coach is neglect your future. There's a lot of times as coaches, we are just trying to survive, just trying to stay above water. I get it. I've been a head coach now for a long time, especially early on in your career. You just want to get to the next day. And then, then the next thing you open up is, okay, now we got a game plan. We got to win on Friday night, because if I don't win on Friday night, I'll get fired. And so that's where all your focus goes, is what can make me better immediately, right? As coaches age, or as you're around coaches that have been in this game long enough, they'll help you and let you understand that the value of those younger developmental players, that's your future. And if you don't invest time into it, here's what's going to happen, because I've seen it, unfortunately, in my own program early on till we got it fixed. Travel baseball comes around. Travel basketball comes around. You don't even get to see that kid because he started at 10 years old. He had a youth football coach who made him hate football. And so he is now a full-time baseballer. You're never going to get him back. Never. You're going to have the same thing with a kid who played basketball since he was in the 3rd grade, and no one has ever talked to him about playing football. And now he's in the 8th grade. And at that point, everybody thinks it's too late. I don't know why, but that's our society now.
Yeah.
So if you're not heavily invested in what's coming, you better either have a really good transfer portal or a whole lot of talent. Because if you're at the school I'm in, we can't have our best athletes not playing football. And if I don't catch them, it used to be you catch them by 9th or 10th grade. I think you made that comment, Dana. That's when a lot of kids do move. I think you're seeing a shift of a lot of kids around the 5th grade shifting to focusing on whatever it's going to be. And I'm not going to bash every other sport, because they do it in football too. Like, I'm not going to get in that world of this sport's worse than that sport or that sport, whatever it is. We all have our opinion, and organized rest is a lot easier than football. That's what I call baseball. But to me, as a coach, if you don't invest there or have a really good coach that you have delegated to go invest down in those levels, you're going to miss out on kids. You're going to miss out on kids that really could help you, because you guys see it. Why is that kid walking the hall and not playing football? He had a real bad experience in 5th grade, 6th grade, 8th grade. No one's ever talked to him about playing football. He's been here his whole life. then you go to him as 11th grader, and either he comes out and he's so raw it's hard to develop him, or he doesn't want to come out. So highly would recommend, if you have any ability at all, go down there at younger than you think you need to and invest in those kids and in those coaches. It's not as time consuming as you think it is. Those coaches, just go give them your playbook. Just go talk to them about what you want to do. I think we've had a youth podcast on here. They can go back and watch it, I'm sure. But basically, you want to go in and make sure when those kids come to school, they know who you are. Because at this point, kids play sports for the love of sports, but they also play for coaches. And if you're not the coach they know, good luck.
Yeah. No, you make a good point there. And that's just some coaches see it as like a demotion to have to go down to the freshman level or the JV or 7th or 8th grade. And so it's hard to get quality coaches at those levels at some programs, right? And then you just end up with dads, and what do dads do? They run toss 400 times or quarterback lead, because it's easier to snap the ball to one kid and let him run all over the defense, right? But that doesn't teach them anything fundamentally. They don't have an O-line coach that's in there teaching rules and angles and steps, right? And so you just end up with this. By the time they get to you, they're not developed. So you're right, man. Just go in and give them the playbook, invest in those coaches, teach them how to coach. Kenny's lucky enough to have the fbcoachsimpson.com, and he can put people on there, and you can too. If you're listening, you can definitely go there and get some of his products and give that to those coaches so they know exactly how to go coach it. Joe's got the same thing with his stuff, right? Like it's just all about just being able to give that program and teach them how to coach, because there's no school. there's nowhere you go and they teach you how to coach, right? It doesn't happen. You get a kinesiology degree and now all of a sudden you have all the X's and O's and team building and management, and no, it doesn't work like that. So investing in those guys too.
We have a coach, like we have a 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade team. Now we're lucky that some of the coaches have kids like me that play on one of the teams. My 5th grade son plays, but we try to have one coach assigned to each team that will be there on their games and try to make at least one practice a week. They don't have to be, they're not the head coach. They don't have to be super involved, but that are there to kind of monitor. And really, I'm looking for 2 things: keep the kids safe and make sure the kids know who you are, because that's the face they're going to associate with our program.
Yeah, I love it. That's excellent. All right, Coach. Any last things before we sign out of here?
No, good luck to the coaches that are going. I'm imagining this is probably coming out here near the end of the season. So if you've had a rough season, hey, try to finish strong. If you're having a great season, good luck. We'd love to hear about it. If you're listening to this on YouTube, you can drop a comment down there. Let us know other topics you want. I know we're about to hit off-season football for quite a few people. So we plan to rev up, bringing some guests on and kind of going through some new stuff. And Daniel's got some good stuff planned.
Yeah. It's the guesting is definitely something we have to do off season. Getting us 2 together is something kind of be difficult. So having a 3rd person is not always super easy. All the guys we want to talk to are all busy, right? So, all right. Social media wise, I am at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter or X, and you can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. Coach Simpson, where can they get you at?
Yeah, all things FB Coach Simpson. So fbcoachsimpson.com, at FB Coach Simpson on Twitter, or fbcoachsimpson@gmail is my email. Of course, fbcoachsimpson.com is my website. Got a new website coming out pretty soon called Coach's Cap. And that's where we're going to be having my first ever invention, which is actually a coach's hat. I put a Fox 40 whistle because I'm a whistle snob. You got to have the right whistle with the right hat. And so I got it on there. I'm excited about it. I'm sure we'll be releasing that probably sometime this off season.
Awesome. I'm still waiting on mine. I'm ready to rock
it. I'm waiting on the sample to get everything approved.
So. There we go. The podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod. You can jump on. That's on the Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. You can jump on there and check out. We're just sharing some episodes and stuff. We want to thank you for being a listener to the Coaching 101 podcast. We hope you'll join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to the show so you'll always know when the new episodes are out. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation. Man, maybe I should have given up on this whole sign out. No matter the situation, find a way.